Welcome to the Lovecars on the Grid podcast, your global motorsport roundup with me, Tiff, Needell and Paul Woodman.
Welcome to Lovecars on the Grid, your global motorsport podcast roundup. We're a little bit late this week. My apologies. It's thanks to this person or virus thing here that's going on. It's like a bad flu. I've been down for a couple of days. But anyway, enough of that. We got loads to go through. It was a crazy busy weekend all over the world. F1, F2, F3, Porsche Supercup, all from Austria. Bit of crowd controversy that we'll come on to first. WEC from Monza, where Peugeot made their debut. You had some buggies, some off-road electric buggies in Sardinia, and over in the USA, NASCAR and Indycar, with some news possibly the next McLaren driver might be coming from stateside. Back home, there was a fastest lap. Someone from someone, I don't know who it was, but there was a fastest lap somewhere in back home in the UK.
Look forward to hearing about that.
And that's pretty much it. But we've got to kick off, I think, Tiff, with this crowd controversy over in Austria. What do you make of it all? There's a couple of different things that are happening. One, let's start with the booing.
Well, the trouble is it escalated big time. We commented a week ago, that Lewis was complaining at Silverstone. There was a bit of booing and don't boo Max on the podium. And I think we have to, as we build up to what then grew in Austria, that we have to put in the context that it's really from last year, and it was such a controversial year, with massive Max fans and massive Lewis fans, rioting about the Abu Dhabi and so much on social media. So there is this, and I think, the booing, it only happens rarely when there's, just an occasional sort of, controversial thing like this. It's not all the time. But it sort of got worse in Austria because after Lewis had his crash in qualifying, there was some booing from the opposition fans. And I think everybody says, he was saying, well, you mustn't boo. I could be on my way to hospital or something. I honestly don't believe if it was like a Grosjean crash or a Zhao crash, I don't think that would have got any part of the crowd, well, hopefully not, doing the boo. But when he skates across the gravel trap and hits the wall, and we've seen that hundreds of times in Formula One, and Formula One is so safe really at that level, I don't think anybody thinks, he might get hurt in that crash. And I think because you so want that driver to be out of qualifying, and it's the same with the British fans with Verstappen fell off in that manner, I think there is an initial, a boo goes out. Then if the driver didn't get out of the car, I think there'll be a stunned silence, and everybody in motorsport will be concerned. So I think you have to split the sort of where you boo, but it is a human reaction. We're both football fans, and it happens all the time with opposition players we don't like. They get a lot of, and it's not saying it's good or should happen, but I think if you're on the edge of your seat and something happens that pleases you, you go, hey, Hamilton's out. Oh no, it might be, So that's the booing.
And the football analogy is the perfect one because then opposing fans, if somebody is seriously hurt, and we've seen it before, always they'll get a standing ovation.
Hush crowd ovation when he's stretched off and that sort of thing. Yeah. So I think you can't completely put a lid on a sort of natural reaction when there's this huge adversity between those two drivers that's just happening at this moment, and probably not with any other drivers it wouldn't have happened. Then it got worse in Austria. Sorry.
Do Max and Lewis like each other?
I have no idea. But it got worse in Austria because, there's mass crowds on both sides. There was apparently some sexual harassment, awful racist names coming out. And the crowd did seem to be getting more and more, so dare I say, like a bad football crowd. So it does need somehow reining in this sort of Max versus Lewis fans. So, when the sexual harassment really was horrendous sounding, and that's got to be cracked down.
People about that because it's upskirting, it's called, and it sounds horrific. But
some poor girl was assaulted really in modern terminology, and that really can't be happening. Awful.
Yeah, absolutely.
A bit of fun, a bit of enthusiasm, maybe the odd cheer when someone goes off, but then respect. And as I said, I think it was a big shunt. Nobody, because those big crashes like Grosjean's and Guan Yu Zhao's they put quieten everybody with terror. It's a shame that all happened because it was quite an entertaining Grand Prix. Ferrari won, so it was a good Grand Prix marred by crowd control.
Yeah, it was a very good Grand Prix. I felt sorry for Carlos Sainz, who of course came off.
Yeah.
With lots of confidence from the week before, but it was, and I felt sorry for Ferrari. It just shows how much on the edge these cars are.
Yeah. I mean, the other trouble is we track limits and overtaking, that stupid circuit. Well, I think it's a bit stupid. Always causes controversy because it is so 2 or 3 of the corners are designed almost that if you go wide, you're going to go off track limits. They're sort of, you're ending the corner while still cornering. Whereas a classic late apex corner, that doesn't happen. It's when a corner cuts in on you towards the end, when you're already committed from the apex onwards. So you almost can't add any more lock, which is the same that happened in the actions. The track limits and the turn 4 clashes are both because the guy, when you've committed to an apex in a 2-ton Formula 1 car, you're committed. You can't then change your line, which is why if you then drift out with understeer and you do the track limits. So, but it happened in Formula 2 and Formula 3. I mean, there were just so many track limits called out. But just go to the overtaking, George, the problem they've allowed this, if you're ahead or level at the apex, you then have right of way. By the time you've got to the apex, you can't do any more. You've defended like mad. You've braked as late as possible on the inside. You've got to the apex. Where you go next, the driver has no more control. He knows that he needs all the road pretty much. But if the guy on the outside has done this bold move to get an inch ahead, he's then saying, right, I've got the right now. About the inside, so, well, I know it's your right, mate. Yeah, I know that's the rule, but I can't do anything. With the, it was Gasly, I think, wasn't it, who did Vettel later on. You actually see him turning the steering wheel more, but that makes more understeer. We all know that. You feed where the grip is. So this overtake of the outside law still needs to be looked at. It's very specific to some circuits. We've got 2 race directors, and the drivers are now beginning to say, well, we need the same feeling of both ways. You've got to listen to us more. I commented also this going in a straight line. We almost had another Guan Yu Zhao incident going off the line in the sprint race. Again, that was Gasly, wasn't it? Just moved a bit to the left. You're going out to the first corner. You haven't got time to. And Lewis still had his nose in there. No, who was it? Lewis. Who did he go across the air? It was Lewis. And they clashed. Not so dramatically, of course, as at Silverstone. So there's a bit of a going in the straight line off the grid element of a problem, and this overtaking round the outside. Which you can't have. I mean, in my days of motor racing, if you tried around the outside, you knew that you'd have to give a lot of room, not just an inch of room. It's my line, because the guy on the inside has braked as late as possible. So but plenty of battles. So move on to the plus sides. Mick Schumacher. Wait. Sorry.
If the guy on the inside is completely offline, so the line is outside cutting in, but the guy on the inside has got you. And you still got to, obviously, you've got to yield to him. But then you would expect to get the undercut and get him on the way out with a better exit. Is that?
Which way's going now? The undercut is if you brake. Well, the undercut was the old way of doing it, right? The guy on the outside, you push the bloke ahead of you to the inside, knowing he's then going to run wide. Yeah. This created the undercut. So then on the outside, you'd brake a bit more and cut back to overtake on the following straight. But because of the new regulation, that doesn't encourage you to look for the traditional method of overtaking. So now you're encouraged to brake less and just get an inch ahead before the apex. So it's almost taken away the classic undercut, which is what we saw at Silverstone when Lewis went by both Ferrari and thing.
I'm asking for a friend, because we will come on to it in a moment with Caterham Racing.
Blimey. Oh, gosh.
A little bit of that.
So let's get back to positives. Mick Schumacher, I think, was the biggest positive. I mean, he's been transformed. I don't know what happened. Maybe when he cut his car in half in Monaco, they gave him a new one, and maybe the car works better. But, he's come alive. And funny enough, when he won the Formula 3 championship, he was useless for half the season. And then someone at the team clicked and got a setup he liked, and he won sort of 6 races on the trot to win the championship. So I've been dropping Mick for next year, and now all of a sudden he's back in the pack. Well, he finished, 5th, didn't he? Now, Mick was 6th and K-Mag was 8th.
Yeah.
Lots of battles going on. The Mercedes picking up 3rd and 4th. They seem to be slow in a straight line. It's one of their problems, whether that's aero or engine, we don't know. But they fight hard. I mean, George had his nose knocked out when he knocked Perez and had an early pit stop, but he still fought his way back to 4th place. So if we can just get those Mercedes half a second quicker, we're going to have a fabulous battle, with 6 cars, battling for the lead. But
wouldn't that be amazing? Because it's normally always a 2 manufacturer championship, always throughout the years, or one will dominate it. So it'd be great to get all 3 of them in the mix.
Yeah.
Or more, or even more.
Yeah. But yeah, track limits. And Formula 2 and Formula 3, I watched those. But again, there were so many track limits. And it almost shows it's the circuit that's at fault. It's the shape of the corners. So many of them encourage this sort of, you commit to the apex, and you've gone in a bit too quick. There's quite like the curb at the exit of turn 1, it's a yellow sausage. So that is a very obvious, so a driver can't say you didn't feel it. You either put gravel there, which a lot of people want, but there'll be so much gravel everywhere and cars stop at the gravel track. And I think Lando got pinged for his 3rd track limits because he went over that yellow sausage curve. And as he said quite rightly, the curb is so big, I lost a second, or I lost half a second. So it was almost a self-disciplining curve. But then a curb will cause an accident, which will come to become a Monza World Endurance Sports Cup. But Carlos Sainz, in fact, just going back, we're back again to negatives. But turn 1, sprint race, he didn't try to go inside that yellow curb. He just deliberately, turn 1, first lap, saw, Russell's got me here. He shot straight off, almost before the big yellow curb, and came back on with more momentum than George, and overtook him before turn 2. No action by stewards. Anyway, curbs. Just to go through Formula 2 and Formula 3 quickly-ish of Porsches. The sprint race was won by Aussie Marcus Armstrong, who was 10th fastest, got pole position. I don't want to like sprint races. It seems to give people wins, but Marcus, it's good. He's won. Théo Pourchaire, who qualified 9th, was given 2nd on the grid, finished 2nd. It's also predictable at times. But the main race was fascinating. It rained in the morning. Formula 3 race was really wet. And the front 6 started on wets in the F2, but it was very much a drying track. On the top 7 did, wasn't it? But 8th place man on the grid, Richard Verschoor, first one to start the slicks. He won the race, but then he didn't win the race because he ran out of petrol on the way in. So that promoted Jehan Daruvala to win the race. But he didn't win the race because his Prema team had been out with the leaf blowers, drying the track around his tyres. You're allowed leaf blowers on the grid to cool your engine. You're not allowed to dry the track. So he got pinged 20 seconds, which meant that the 3rd finishing person, Logan Sargent, who won at Silverstone, got his 2nd feature race. He came through to be the man that won the race. And surviving all, we had 2 Brits. We mentioned last week we haven't really got any competitive Brits, but 2 struggling Brits had a really good week in Austria with Jake Hughes, who finished 5th, and Ollie Coolber was 6th. So it was some good news for our British F2 drivers. A fairly chaotic race, entertaining. And Roberto Maria, word for him, the Spanish driver. He was in Formula 1 about 5-6 years ago. Wasn't he in one of those weird teams at the back, Caterhams or something like that? So he's got a seat back in F2 for one race. He qualified 21st, had a fabulous race up to 2nd, and finished the feature race 2nd. I forgot about him, but he got pinged for track limits 3 times, so he got pinged back. So in fact, of course, Logan Sargent was actually 4th on the road and won the race.
Wow.
Formula 3, the American Jack Crawford won the reverse grid race. But the main race, and this was actually something I brought up last week. Remember I talked about Isaac Hadjar, who won the reverse grid race at Silverstone, and then came through from about 9th on the grid to finish 4th in the feature race. I thought he looked, he overtook well. In the reverse grid race, I think he started about 4th or 5th. And I was questioning how on earth, he's never won a championship in his life. He's finished sort of 2nds and 3rds. How did he get the Red Bull gig? I was intrigued to know, who picked. But obviously someone at Red Bull has spotted the talent, because he was sensational in the wet and just romped away from pole position to win the Formula 3 race. So me and Red Bull have spotted Isaac Hadjar, French, but obviously I'm not sure his parental where he's from. French. Now, I get in trouble if I say that, because I just said a name doesn't look French, but his name doesn't look French. But anyway, a real talent, I think, for the future.
Yeah.
And then Porsche Supercup, we're now following that a bit. We've got Harry King up the front. Qualified 2nd this time, Harry. Still hasn't won a race, but he was on the right-hand side of the grid, which was, after the rain in the morning, wasn't as quick. Spun his wheels, dropped back and finished 4th. But I'm looking forward to Harry King's first Porsche Supercup win.
Tell me, who's going to win the Formula One championship? Is it going to be Max or Charles or somebody else?
Max. I think Charles will close, but I don't think there's enough. Although they were way off the pace in Austria. We got overtaken 3 times by Leclerc when all the tyres were different grip available. So who knows? I mean, Ferrari have got a rear wing that's given them good straight line speed, because that's where Max had a bit of an advantage before. And that's where obviously Mercedes are really lacking. It looks like Ferrari have got an aero setup that's giving grip and straight line speed at the moment. So if they finish 1-2 ahead of Max for about 4 or 5 Grand Prix, it could get really exciting towards the end.
You could, and on paper actually. So Charles has had 6 pole positions as opposed to Max's 3. But Max has had 6 wins over Charles's 3. But Charles has led more laps. He's led 258 laps over 253.
What's the points gap now at the top?
38. So
so only one retirement. 25 points. Yeah, but yeah.
One retirement. Excuse me, from Max, and a win from Charles. It's going to make it interesting again, but it's still interesting.
Well, obviously, I'd like Charles to win. I'd like Ferrari to have a win. So, all right, I'll change my mind. Charles. Or Charles. We should say Charles.
Yeah. Your French is a little bit better than mine. You can say Charles, and I'll say Charles.
And sports cars, the world debut of the weirdest looking hypercar that's ever graced the grid. I think, apart from
the Peugeot you're referring to.
Sorry.
The Peugeot.
The Peugeot, yeah, with a funny name. Was it a 9x8 or 9x8? I'm not sure. I haven't researched why it's called a 9x8. But of course, it was because all the press pictures, it had no rear wing on the back. And I was one that said it'll have a wing by the time it races. It'll have a wing. And it didn't. It didn't have a rear wing on. It was reasonably on the pace, this balance of power. I don't know whether they're working on exactly the same rules as Toyota, whether individual manufacturers have given different balances of power. But it was more or less on the pace from the word go. I didn't know actually there is some sort of coefficient of drag versus downforce. There are rules actually that dictate that you can't actually have a lot of downforce. You're only allowed a certain amount. So anyway, it was a weird looking device. Qualified, I'm not quite. One didn't make qualifying because it broke down, and the other one I think qualified 5th or 6th. But with an extra 18 horsepower, the Glickenhaus, now in blue, the most beautiful looking. The Peugeot's the ugly duckling, the Glickenhaus is the swan. Got pole, stormed away at the front, but sadly had an engine failure, which put it out. And then we had the Alpine, which is what do they call it? Some thingy. It's not a proper hypercar. It's an LMP1, a grandfathered LMP1, they call it. Anyway, the Alpine boys started catching the Toyotas, who were sort of cruising around a bit off the pace thanks to the balance of power, pushing them backwards. Overtook one, then tried to take the lead, and Kobayashi shut the door slightly at the end of the straight, and Kobayashi's tyre got ripped off his Toyota. So the Alpine got through to win in Monza. The Toyota 2nd and 3rd, and the one Peugeot finished, and the other 33rd, and the other retired. But anyway, very promising debut from Peugeot, but it's not the sort of car. Maybe it is the sort of car you want to stick on a photo on your wall, but it's an ugly thing to me.
Amazing. I think it looks really good. It reminds me of the Ferrari Daytona SP3, is that it? The new Ferrari supercar. So is it a good time to talk about sausage curbs?
Well, yes, because in the sports car races, Aston Martin had the most horrendous crash. We need Abby Eaton here to be the FIA's curb manager. It was quite a normal curb, sort of the normal serrated, fairly heavy serrated curb. And it's a place where you wouldn't normally go over the curb, because he got it sideways, turning into the fast left, right, left at Monza, the Ascari chicane, isn't it? So he got it fully sideways at the first apex. So he went out to the edge of the road and got the nasty curb absolutely side on. And of course, the car's already maximum roll, the tyres are on the limit, and it just dug in. And it ripped the door off and ripped the underbody off and just sent him into this huge roll. And lucky escaped, who was Enrique Chavez. Enrique. My Spanish isn't as good as my French. So it's a curb that nobody would ever go over. It's not a curb where you go to gain an advantage. It's like an exit curb. So it's almost an unnecessary curb in that place. And I think this is the whole thing with track limits. You've got to go to every corner with a racing driver to understand where you are going to want to make a bit of an advantage by going over a curb. Because people say we'll put gravel in the middle of that Ascari chicane, but if they'd gone off as he did, he would have taken a whole beach full of gravel and reappeared on the exit of the corner, shoveling a vast amount of gravel over the circuit. So you want to try and avoid corners where you're going to bring gravel back on the track. So they're from the middle of an S-bend. They're not ideal. So I really don't know what the answer is. I think you've got to go to, I mean, obviously Abby Eaton, she had a sausage curbs at 90 degrees to the way cars would go. Well, that's obviously not a good idea, is it? As Abby quite, unfortunately demonstrated.
If you look at Abby's tweets and the amount of drivers, including Ben Collins, amount of drivers that say that get rid of the sausage curbs, just get rid of them. But you're not so strongly in that opinion.
If they're in the right place, so that exit of turn one, as I said in Austria, it's your car's already finished the corner, so you can't attack it from side on, you can't attack it from head on. It's not in a position that's in any way possible. So a nudgy sausage when you finish in the corner, so you'd actually know where the track limit was because you've just nudged a bigger, it depends on the height of the sausage curb, and it's just something where someone, the FIA, need to appoint a track limits engineer with a racing driver following them around.
Because some of the sausage curbs are much bigger. Some of them are.
Yeah.
The smaller ones, but the thing is, when you know they're there, I do, and I'm sure everyone else does. You drive on them because it's quicker. So it is really difficult. But
I always think the best way with the gravel ideas is because now they're saying it's when your inside tire completely crosses the white line, you're pinged. And the drivers are saying, well, even with those silly mud guards, it's actually quite hard for them to see. But also, they're so already committed, as I said earlier, they're just understeering wide. But if there are one or two corners where if the gravel started, as your wheel is almost going to cross the line, your left wheels are in the gravel. So it would be a two ways of telling you when you've track limited. People say, I didn't do it. When did I do it? I didn't do it. Because it's so marginal on the inside, they can't feel it or see it. So if the gravel was just on the edge, so the gap between gravel and white line is narrower than the car, then that would be a much simpler way of...
You know what I would have? I'd have a team of geeks, certainly in the top races like F1. They don't have to be geeks. We could be any normal people. But I have a team of data analysts or looking at the images. And I know you're really against this, but issuing track limits, and if you get them within the race, they get issued. You get a 5-second penalty within the race. And I know you're really against that because then you don't know.
It is mainly in the race, but it is confusing for the public, because they're pinged it like in the Formula 2 race. The winner was, he ran out of fuel, but second and fourth. It's just so confusing to the Joe public. You see the race end.
Yeah, but they would soon stop, Tiff. People would soon stop doing it if they were.
But they don't know they've done it. All these drivers say, "I didn't do it. I didn't do it. I didn't do it."
That's it, because like at the MSV circuits, Jonathan Palmer's circuits, by the way, brilliant, and where they just simply take a photo. If you go on the sensor, so something along those lines, you go on the sensor, take a photo. It's in black and white or in colour, and that's your penalty. And the driver can say, "I didn't do it."
Yeah, but then you've got the penalty because the pit board tells you or something, but half the crowd don't know. So they see them race to the finish line.
So these analysts put it on the TV, they're employed, and they have to put it on. It says +5 seconds, +5 seconds. And then it would almost in a way become more exciting, wouldn't it? Because then...
No. I hate working out, okay, he's got a 5-second penalty. Where does that put him? And of course, if you have a safety car with 2 laps to go and you've got a 5-second penalty, you lose about 20 places after the restart. Yeah. Whereas, if the race goes to the end naturally, your 5-second penalty might drop you 2 places.
Yeah.
So, no, I hate all these penalties like that. But it is the only way to do it. We have to have track limits. And I think, you're right, the penalty. But I quite like the sort of drop 1 place.
Yeah.
So you just have to let one car back past. Because then you'll know, you can see it on the track, then you race to the finish with no penalty. So, drop 1 place is your order. Try that. It's the future.
I'm too tired to think at the moment.
The other bit of future, let's move on to more future. Extreme E, they were bouncing up and down in their buggies in Sardinia. Nobody seemed to be talking about it on the internet or social media. They actually had a race on the Thursday. They had a double header, a Thursday and a Saturday. There's some good pictures on YouTube of massive rollovers. They do roll over well, those buggies. I mean, I'd be terrified to drive one. Get them sideways in the dirt and they just tumble.
I saw Jensen at the Goodwood Festival Speed, and their lean on those things is incredible. They
had one go up the hill, did they?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, they're very softly sprung. I mean, brutal on board when they raced, but it was pretty processional. I watched the final on YouTube, but it was pretty processional.
So
anyway, I'm not warming. I'm still not warming to Extreme E. No. They're all these made for television. There's no spectators out there, of course. It's all these made for PR TV stuff.
And influencers.
And influences all out in Sardinia saying, this is wonderful. Yeah, no.
We're just jealous that we never get invited.
They probably looked at some of our videos. We're not on the list. But otherwise, motorsport over in America, there was not much anywhere else in the world. The US had a NASCAR race, which was another quite cracking race at Atlanta. Another dramatic finish. Chase Elliott managed to win, but we had another. Because great with NASCAR, the small team can win, as we've seen in the past. And Corey LaJoie worked his way to the front. He led the last restart. But Chase, he said on the interview, he said he didn't know what to do because he had to set the pace and when in the restart to go green. So Chase Elliott out fumbled it. LaJoie had one final go on the last lap of taking the lead around the outside, and Chase squeezed him up into the wall. So LaJoie, a lap from winning, ended up causing another multiple mass shunt. So that's entertainment. But the main thing in America is the Indycar gossip. No races last week for Indycar, but it's all kicking off contract-wise. Today, in fact, Chip Ganassi said Palu, our champion, is re-signed for next year. 3 hours later, McLaren, this is probably yesterday in America, of course, McLaren says, we've signed Palu. So there's amazing battles going on. Trying to get Alex Palou's signature. So McLaren now claim they got him. Over at McLaren Formula One, they invited Carlton Herta over to Portimao for two-day test this week, Monday, Tuesday. Of course, Herta drives the opposition, Andretti. So Pato Award, the McLaren signed team man who had some test laps as well last year, he's pretty bit nose put out the joint. So it's all kicking off. And sort of McLaren sort of trying to sign up everybody. So it's like one IndyCar driver. It looks like they're going to be in a McLaren Formula One car in 1 or 2 years' time, depending on Ricciardo staying for another year or not. So the candidates are now Pato Award, who's already tested for McLaren, Colton Herta from Andretti, who's tested for McLaren, and now they signed Alex Palau, Spanish, not sure pronunciation, sorry everybody, who's dumped Ganassi, the team that took him to the title, to move to McLaren with the promise of a Formula One test, which all means that poor old Felix Rosenqvist, who's in the number 2 McLaren car, IndyCar, looks like he's going to be stuffed down to McLaren's new Formula E seat next year. Massive goings on.
People from that name, Sebastian Vettel and Alex Albon, from that potential.
Alex, they can't employ Vettel, please.
I hope not. I mean, he's amazing, and
I know he's a wonderful ambassador. A bit like it's great. I didn't mention him in the Formula One race. Dear old, where have we gone? Going mad myself now. I've lost it now completely.
Sebastian Vettel, Alex Albon.
No, who came through? Who finished 10th? Oh, Fernando. I knew someone else I meant to mention. Fernando, who didn't even start the sprint race, had to start from the back, and he battles away, and he finished 10th. He came through fighting away. So these old veterans, they sort of sometimes seem to put an effort in, and other times I just think that some new names need to be given the chance. Although Alex Albon does deserve at the front of the field, Formula One, another go at a front-running car. Maybe the Williams will be a front-running car.
And why keep him until the end of the season? Be ruthless like Red Bull. Be ruthless. He's one of the most entertaining blokes ever in Formula One, but he's not right.
Yeah, but neither Herta Award or Palau will be ready for F1 this year. So I think that'd be a bit of a jump of the gun. More sadder news for IndyCar that Tatiana Calderon's Rocket money hasn't been paid for this weekend. So one of only 2 females in top flight single-seaters looks like their ride might come to an end.
So who would win the race out of her and Jamie Chadwick, a single-seater race?
I think Tatiana would beat Jamie. But then Tatiana's, right at the back of, major single-seaters. So
I did see something funny on Twitter. I don't know if you've seen it. I'm not going to retweet it, but it was showing current Formula One drivers if they were NASCAR drivers. They've got the sort of wraparound shade. They've all put on a bit of weight and grown beards. But it's funny the perception over the years of NASCAR. But of course, the NASCAR guys are, fit athletes as well. But
well, you think they are, and yet they all are quite chubby. But they race every weekend. So they've got to be fit, haven't they, to do all that? In other news, yes.
I gave good nights again the other day when I was ill, getting over my COVID with.
Did you?
Ricky Bobby. In other news.
In other news, yes, someone got a first fastest lap of their driving career.
I know.
No more podiums, but a fastest. I watched the times on Timing Solutions, great stuff. Live. I watched your race live. You only qualified 8th. You got up to 3rd, didn't you, in race 1? But it looked like there was just a battle between 8 cars.
Qualified 6th, got up to 3rd, and then the safety car came out, and I just dropped back to 7th. It's brutal. You leave one gap and you get mugged by 3 cars. And then the second race, I started 7th, and to be honest, I finished 3rd because I overtook Mark Jones. We had an amazing battle, Mark and I. Overtook him down the final straight going into the chicane at Donington, and then saw a yellow flag, so I eased off and he kept his toe down. So then round the next corner, it was checkered flag. They stopped a lap early, and I wasn't going to go to the stewards and say, my mate overtook me on the yellow flag. So actually, the
yellows were out for the chicane. He overtook you into the chicane.
He overtook me into the chicane, yeah.
And you can see the yellows approaching the chicane.
But the stewards didn't pick up on it. But it was, I was never, ever, ever going to do that. And we had the most amazing battle. So, but I got the fastest lap, as you said. So it wasn't massive. It wasn't really fast, and it was in the second lap.
Have they got at Donington the illuminated flag squares?
Yeah, it's an MSV. So because
they're brilliant. I saw that Thruxton when they were testing the lights at Thruxton when I was down there doing some BMW rides.
Yeah.
And they really catch your eye. I mean, in the past, I've often said the more they've moved Marshall's posts further away from the track for safety reasons, I've often said, well, you can't see these bloody flags.
Yeah.
But coming down the straight to the chicane, was there a big yellow light?
There was, yeah. So it came on. I overtook Mark. I was only a car past him, and then I saw it. So I put my hand up. And then Mark just carried on going.
What did he say? Did you have a chat with him about it? Did you not see the yellow?
Well, the first thing I did when I went in, I said, Mark, I'm so sorry, but I've got 3rd. And he said, it was close. And then I thought about it, and I just thought, and Mark was up on the podium and everything. No one knew anything. So what that means in racing terms, I'd have had to take my card to the stewards and lodge a complaint against my mate. Which I just wasn't going to do. But it was a brilliant racing weekend. This Caterham racing is incredible. It's so close, and it's so brutal as well. We've got a new...
And race 2, fastest lap, or 4th place race still, yeah.
Yeah, so I got 4th place. But you know what, actually? Do you know why I didn't... Another reason why I didn't complain was because Fred Chiddix was lying 3rd. Jeff Newman, Fred Chiddix and Charlie Lower are ahead of everyone else. They're consistently ahead of everyone else. Fred got a puncture, so I would have at best only had 4th anyway. So so there you go.
And finally,
but hang on, David Rook, Dr. David Rook, one of my colleagues, he had a brilliant race. He's a new follower, so I got to mention him. And also, even though I felt knackered, because that's when my COVID came on.
Be a follower, get mentioned. This is the thing. Be a follower, get a mention.
I drove the car home as well. 2 days of hard practice, testing, 2 days of brutal racing, getting hit all over. I drove the car home. It was about 120 miles. So those cars are just amazing. I love them so much.
And then you got COVID.
And then, then I got home, and I was in bed I got home about 3 o'clock. I was in bed from 4 o'clock until this morning were completely wiped out.
And finally,
yes,
terrible. He's gone. He's gone back down under. He's gone back down under.
Michael,
what
Masi,
a shame.
What do you think of Michael Masi leaving the FIA completely?
Wonderful. Had to happen. I mean, isn't everyone likes the bloke, and the FIA were really good. They gave him another job, But I think he knew he just couldn't stay working there because he just knew, there was still so many memories. So he's gracefully gone, which is great. I think he had to walk out and find a new life, a new career. And he's been very nice in his retirement speech. Hasn't mentioned the incident, obviously.
If you are responsible for writing history or rewriting history, that you literally, you are the man responsible for rewriting history that the world's most successful ever Formula One driver wasn't because of you. It's just so bizarre.
Sits on your shoulders forever, doesn't it, really?
Well, I don't know how he feels. He just seems quite... I don't want anyone to lose their job, and I don't want anyone to get knocked in life. I really don't. I'm such a positive person. But how must he feel? And I just feel that he just seems a bit arrogant about the whole thing.
I don't know. I think maybe massively regrets it. Maybe he just carried away on a spur of a moment. He just sort of pressed the wrong button. Something in his head.
Yeah. And we've all done it. We all make mistakes. Talking mistakes in Formula One, your mate Bernie.
Yes, more. Yeah, also in the news.
400. But this is a good thing about doing a podcast a couple of days later than normal. We've got some breaking news. 400 million tax fraud investigation was. Well, first of all, he supports Putin, his mate Putin, doesn't he? I mean, Bernie's really completely lost the plot. What's he doing coming out and saying that? Anyone that hasn't seen that, he literally said that.
I know.
I would take a bullet for Putin. What?
Yeah. I mean, in the past, sometimes I quite enjoy. He always throws a controversial statement into the pond just to make the waves go. That's been Bernie's style. But the supporting Putin, I just don't know where he's come from. But so maybe he's got the 400 million in rubles somewhere.
Today, does he really want to spend the rest of his life in prison for tax fraud? I mean, it just baffles me because he's clearly got more money than most countries. Yeah. And why would you do a tax fraud of that sort of money where just pay it and live a clean life? I don't get it.
People with money want more money. It's a bizarre world. We see these people with billionaires with massive yachts and, you don't need any more. You've got enough.
You'll never be able to spend it.
But they got a lot of money in the first place because they're people that just desperate to have a lot of money.
Yeah.
It's power. Anyway, moving on.
Next week, we got World Rally in Estonia. That's very dramatic. And it's much nicer when it's snowing, actually, but you've got these beautiful pine forests. Indycar in the USA. Is it?
At IMSA, yeah. It's on Toronto. Oh, okay. Great track, very tight. You've got this massive long straight, a lot of fiddly bits. Always a dramatic race in Toronto. So Toronto IndyCar. I know people have to subscribe to watch it. IMSA race, which is probably on the internet somewhere if you can get it, but it's this 1.5 mile lime rock track, a right little bull ring. That'll be quite spectacular with the LMP1 cars. So a lot of entertainment in America on Sunday nights. Also, World Rally Championship, if you get to see it.
Yeah, Northeast also, there's NASCAR up in New Hampshire. So it's all
of course.
It's America.
And also in America, there's round the docks, not the city centre, the city centre electric racing. No, it's actually on some dockland, which in fact they're not racing next year because they're rebuilding the dockland. Yes, it's got New York in the back of every photo. You can see the New York skyline. There's two races, the Formula E's and New York. And the only thing big stuff in Britain is the British Superbikes at Donington. So if you fancy doing something different, if you haven't been to bikes, that's a great entertaining weekend at Donington.
I got to say, after just spending many hours driving around it over the last few days, they must be off their heads, especially
bikers.
Donington, it's just crazy. Craners is a very undulating downhill. Then you've got a sort of fairly sharp right-hander at the bottom. I couldn't imagine going down there on a bike. I really couldn't imagine it. And there's not that much runoff either. So,
talking of Donington when you're racing, do they still have the tyre stacks at the chicane?
Yes, and they got hit a couple of times. One hard in the 420s, and once in our race as well. Because the problem is,
were you apexing on the tyre stack?
They give you a little bit. You got those little tiny rumble strips, like the things you get in.
Yeah, but were you going over those and apexing on the tyre stack?
Yes.
Yeah. So why not move the tyre stack to the edge of the track?
Yeah, that's what I was.
You're gonna apex on the tyre stack.
Exactly.
Wherever
the tyre stack is, that's where you apex. So we were.
You're damaging your cars going over. Rumble strips.
Yeah,
but you're still apexing on the tyre wall.
Poor old Theo had a big crash behind me. There was the only way. It's really brutal. So I sent it up the inside down the straight. Theo didn't back out. I was on the inside of Mark, so I had the line. So it was almost a bit of a karting move that everyone was doing on me the day before, blocking them turning in on you. So I was well there on there. And then instead of Theo backing out and taking his medicine, he tried to go 3 wide, lost it. He attacked Mark at the back, lost it, went sideways, and then Simon Patel, who was racing incredibly well, went into Theo at 53 miles an hour and broke his chassis. So Theo was racing unbelievably well this weekend as well. It's all so tight now. I can't wait for you to come back. But I don't think you're there until Knock Hill, which is the last race of the season. I think you're busy for Anglesey, but we'll find
both are quite a long way away from where I live. Much as I know it's exciting racing, they're quite a long way away, those two circuits.
Scotland will be fun. So
Wonderful. So yeah, lots of action next weekend. As always, post your comments on everything down below.
Sorry it's late. I blame COVID. But thanks for joining us as always.
And quickly, make sure you hydrate, put suntan lotion on, don't die this week. Don't die. I read somewhere
roads melting.
There was a night they were going to do a heat alert. I think this was on Sunday. I read this for Monday. A heat alert will go out at 9 a.m. on Monday. Oh, do sirens go off? Where does this heat alert come from? It's hot.
Roads
it happens.
The sun's out in the UK. Who would believe it? Anyway.
Who would believe it?
Hey, thanks.
If I were you, just have a cold beer, boys. Cheers and girls. Bye.